Welcome, everyone, to Platinum Perspective, the show about beauty, psychology, and the intersection of the two. I'm your co host, Sarah.
And I'm Megan. Sarah and I are best friends who put the work in to get the most out of life so you don't have to.
Okay, so today we actually had another topic planned, but Sephora Kids is taking over. It's taking over all of our news and social outlets. So we are going to talk about that today because it's really the perfect topic for our two interests. So for anyone who's been living under a rock and doesn't know what Sephora Kids is, no, I'm just kidding. It just feels like it's been everywhere. It's so consuming right now. But it first started coming out a few weeks ago that certain children, mostly girls as young as 8, all the way up to teenagers, have been labeled Sephora Kids. And the idea is that Sephora employees, and this is happening at other retailers as well, Ulta as well, but Sephora employees took to TikTok to share stories about these really young customers and their bad behavior and what they were shopping for. So it kind of blew up on TikTok and then through all the other social outlets. And then the New York Post did an article, and now the Reddit threads are extensive.
Mm.
There's a lot of opinions and a lot of information on this topic. So we're going to get into it a little bit. But basically, what's happening is they're Gen Alpha, which are children born from 2010 to 2024. So all of our kids
So
are
our
Gen.
kids are Gen Alpha. Okay.
Yeah. So
Wow.
Gen Alpha, there is this idea that they're being driven by the desire to fit in with peers, and there has been early social media use. And so they are looking for and buying extensive and expensive skincare and makeup routines to kind of have status within their peer group. But because they are still children, there's a lot of bad behavior associated with this, like going into Sephora and playing with the samples and making a mess of them.
Oh,
And right. And not
yeah.
being parents not being present to help them with this. And Patrick Starr, do you know who Patrick Starr is? They have their own beauty brand at Sephora right now called One Size. And I was dying. Did you see their TikToks by chance, Megan?
No, no, no,
Okay,
no.
so
What happened?
you'll have to look them up. So
Okay.
they they do like
Oh,
the baby face filter,
mm-hmm.
and they pretend that they're a child in Sephora and they're just being really obnoxious, asking for drunk elephant and for all these different products that are just, way too mature for their baby skin. But they have the baby face filter on.
Oh my
And then
gosh.
they'll have a Sephora employee pretend to say, well, what about One Size? And then they'll have the baby face filter on and they'll be like, what's One Size? As if it's not cool, and that's their own brand.
Oh,
But
how funny.
check out Patrick Starr on the TikToks that they're doing on this because it's pretty amazing. But aside from that funny piece that's kind of been woven through this issue, there are a lot of serious pieces to it as well. So we're going to kind of jump into that. And before we do, I just wanted to note that Sephora and Ulta have both been asked to comment and neither have responded. So,
Oh, interesting.
yeah.
Especially since the employees are the ones coming forward with some of this content. Huh.
Right. Yeah. It's
I
really
wonder what their
interesting.
stance is. Yeah. Maybe
Yeah.
it behooves them not to have a stance in this
Yeah.
case, but
Because it's sales or sales. We'll
sales
get
are
into that.
sales.
We'll get
Yeah,
into
yeah,
that a
yeah.
little bit.
Okay. Well, I have some rapid fire questions for you if you are
Okay.
ready about this topic.
Let's go.
So, number one, is makeup and skincare age specific?
Um, Being in the makeup industry for so long, I believe that makeup is subjective and there is
Okay.
no age limit, and that creativity starts really young. And whatever outlet that comes out in, whether it's makeup or face paint or art, I think it's all fantastic. Skincare is a totally different story, and we can get into that a little bit more.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sounds good. Are beauty brands really targeting children as young as 8 to 10? In your opinion, is that happening?
I mean, it appears that that's happening. I don't think that it was intentional without knowing. I don't think it's intentional, but like I mentioned before, sales are sales and they're not definitely not trying to sell to them right now, which is concerning.
Right. Right. Yeah. Okay. And do you think this number 3, is this a retailer, a makeup brand, or a social media issue?
I think, there's a little bit of fault in all three, but the biggest one that I would add, and I know that you agree with this, is that it's a parenting issue. And there's
Mm,
permissive parenting, lazy parenting, all of that. That's the issues with any child start in the home, right? Children are children.
that's
So
true.
I think the issue is mostly with parenting. Now, how the retailers and the beauty brands are handling it is probably not in the best way, but the issue definitely starts with the parents.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. It's interesting too, just thinking about it being a parenting issue as you say that. I think about all the constraints and all the craziness that everyone just went through with the pandemic and having to work from home and having kids at home and having to juggle so much. I can see how it's maybe become more common to be a permissive parent because there's just been so much on parents' plates. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
Definitely a big
Yeah.
issue we could talk more about in maybe another episode, but yeah, love
Yeah.
it. Mhm.
Yeah. Well, we can get into it a little bit here too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I, shopping at Ulta and Sephora frequently, have been seeing this firsthand. We live in the Bay Area and our
Have you? Okay.
Ultas and Sephora, they're
Yeah.
pretty busy. And I will see going in there just like groups of really young girls, mostly shopping without parents. And it's interesting because I think back to when I was that age, there were spaces for kids to shop. And I think unintentionally, Sephora's kind of become like the Claire's of our generation or the Limited Two.
Yes.
Um, and it's interesting and it's not totally a bad thing, but I will see groups of kids. And I was standing in line maybe just 2 weeks ago at Ulta, and the entire line in front of me was little girls, like really little, like 8, 9, and 10, some with parents, some without. And, they had Lululemon on and
Wow.
and it's just, and they're buying all these different products. And you wonder, like, is this okay? We're watching this happen to our children. Is this
Mhm.
okay? But the media is definitely portraying it all as bad. I I do disagree to that. Like, yes, there is some bad involved. There's been destruction of property, poor like children poorly treating staff, purchasing and using products that are meant for adult skin, um, and a premature focus on appearance. But there is a lot of good to it as well, right? Like, there's definitely a desire to learn self care, which that's really good. There's mother daughter and then older sister and younger sister bonding over
Mhm.
beauty and self care, which that's a really, really good thing when you have a common interest to bond with your child on. But I'm wondering, have you shop a lot in Ulta and Sephora? Have you seen anything while you've been shopping?
Yeah, and not to this extent of what the media has made it sound like. I mean, I did walk in recently to a Sephora. My 9-year-old daughter, by the way, like this hits home because she is obsessed now with Sephora. She every time we go anywhere near a mall, she asks if there's a Sephora there and if we can go shopping. So it's definitely a huge trend right now. And it was shocking that when you sent this to me, I was like, oh my gosh, this is larger than what's happening in my own household. Like it's a big thing that's happening. It's a
Mhm,
new trend. But I haven't seen terrible behavior. I have seen a lot of younger girls though in Sephora with their parents.
mhm,
And I haven't seen, that it's a problem, but
mhm,
to the extent that these kids are being taught basically perfectionism through filters on Instagram or
mhm,
whatnot, that could be harmful for their psychology, for the
mhm.
how it affects how they're perceiving themselves and how they compare to other people. And that it's like us in magazines, like growing up,
Mhm.
seeing these women on magazines, seeing how skinny and beautiful they were, and not really knowing that they were being altered before they were put on the page.
Yes.
That's happening now, and it's happening all over the place on social media. And it's
Mhm.
just, I think it's a lot for kids to have to handle all that. And, in my house, we're very careful about what our children can see or not see on YouTube, but they do love YouTube. So it's a generational thing. Like it's just
Mhm.
something that everybody seems to gravitate towards, and it's
When
maybe
you
not
said
great.
Yeah, when you said that your oldest daughter was interested in Sephora, I was so surprised. What do you know where that interest came from, and what is
Mhm.
she looking for when she's going there?
It's YouTube, number 1. So she found her way at some point, without my knowledge, made her way to YouTube and started watching influencers put, things on their face, and seeing what they use on their faces and seeing what their regimen is. And at first, I was like, I kind of like that she's interested in this. I don't
Yeah.
really mind it. And then she'd ask me questions about like, what is a toner? What kind of face lotion should I be using? And she's diligent. This kid has problems with diligence in other areas of her life, but this is not one. She is on
Mhm.
top of it. She wears her sunscreen every single day. I did, I think that we'll get into this maybe in a second, but I think there is a lack of product for kids
Mhm.
her age. Like
Mhm.
looking around Sephora, I had a hard time finding things that I wanted her to use that were like appropriate for
Mhm.
her. And so we purchased Ever Eden because you and I had talked a lot about it.
Mhm.
And my neighbor across the street had done the same for her same aged child, her daughter. And unfortunately, the stuff we bought because we thought it was for kids burns their faces.
I
So now we got to
know.
return it. It's like, well, where do I look next? Is it Drunk Elephant? Because I just don't really know
Mhm.
where else to look for her as a
Yeah,
parent. So
I
uh, I
know.
I see it from both sides because I got a beauty best friend, and then I've got I'm not in the beauty industry, and it's
Yeah.
harder for someone like me to decipher where to go to
Mhm.
even get the things that she's asking me for.
Mhm.
But I do think it's a
Yeah.
healthy thing, right? To want to take care of yourself.
I do. I agree. Yes. And I think that to your point, there is a lack of products for this age group, which that makes it tricky. Um, you mentioned Drunk Elephant, and I had this like lower down in the script, but we can just get into it now. So Drunk Elephant, it first of all, something important to know about Drunk Elephant is they're owned by Shiseido. So, Drunk Elephant was started by a mom, Tiffany, years ago, and she started it in her kitchen. But it since has evolved so much, and it is
Oh.
owned by Shiseido, which Shiseido is a massive company. It's based in Japan, and they are looking at sales. They are looking at numbers. So, this drunk elephant kind of obsession with really young girls, I think, because I think it was, started through social media. It was started through TikTok. They have really pretty packaging that's enticing. It's white and then it has neon
Mm.
colors on the top. But this line was created for adults and maybe teenagers, but definitely not 8,
For
9, 10,
kids.
11, 12-year olds. Definitely not. There's a lot of ingredients there that even though it's under the Clean at Sephora, there's a lot of ingredients I wouldn't let my own children use. Children have this very baby soft, precious skin that doesn't need a lot. They
Right.
really just need a very gentle foaming cleanser, maybe an oil free moisturizer, and then they all do need a mineral based SPF. And
Mhm.
that's it. Unless your child has premature acne, then you can look at something like a salicylic acid product for the acne.
Yeah.
But other than that, that's all they need. So I think the idea of having a 8-step routine of drunk elephant, the issue is not the actual skincare. The issue is maybe fitting in, maybe the desire to have something that's hot and trendy right now, and the influence of YouTube or social media.
Mm. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of got offline there. I
Yeah,
think that
sorry.
I know that's okay. It's such a tricky subject for us
It
because
is.
because I do a skincare routine with my daughters, and they're
Mhm.
4 and almost 7. And it's very simple, but it's self-care based.
Yes.
I'm very careful that they're not watching anything that I don't want them to see influencers. I don't want them to have that mirror of like comparing themselves to anyone else.
Mhm.
But I do want to teach them self-confidence through self-care. And that's a really important, but that includes like brushing your teeth, washing your hair,
Yeah.
washing your face, putting your sunscreen on. It's not specific. So jumping back to the different concerns that the media are kind of focused on with this issue right now, um, there's a few. There's permissive parenting, there's social media, and then there's the beauty industry's place within this. So I thought it would be kind of fun with your experience, Dr. Megan, and my experience in the beauty industry to kind of talk about each one a little bit. So the first one that I'm seeing across all the headlines is permissive parenting. And I see that in our own local mall, right? Kids just kind of
Yes.
doing their own thing. And
Mhm.
that happened in our generation too. But what do you think about the influx of young children shopping on their own and then not having manners, or maybe they were never taught how to shop on their own? They were just like let loose in the wild.
Yeah, I find it hard. I find it hard as a parent to let my 9-year-old go do anything without me, much less my younger
Yeah.
two. So when I see young kids out shopping by themselves or doing honestly anything by themselves, number one, I think security issue.
Yeah.
Because kids don't know how to take care of themselves. That's just all there is to it. They're too young. They do need oversight. They need guidance. They need, at least mine, need almost constant correction and teaching how to behave as a civilized person in society. So, I do see this happening. I do think, and I'm pulling a little bit from my practice right now, but like one thing I'm seeing a lot of is parents being pulled in so many directions, having to work, maybe having to do it from home, also having to care for two kids, also having parents living with them, also having X, Y, and Z. And it's just like people and moms I've talked to recently have seemed very overwhelmed with the amount of things that they're having to do right now. And
Mhm.
I do think that that's a shift from maybe even a few years ago when it's always been hard on women, right? To work and be the primary caregiver, which is whether we like it or not, that's just sort of the norm for our
Mhm.
society. It's a lot on women to have to handle all of that. But then you put on top of that the pandemic, and you put on top of that homeschooling, and you put on top of that, and now they're going back to school. And what have they
Mhm.
missed while they were out of
Yes.
school? Like, what kind of
Yes.
experiences did they miss? Like, these kids
Right.
missed some salient experiences, likely,
And
that's
maybe,
impacting what we
yes, and
see.
maybe they missed shopping with their families and being taught etiquette outside of the home. I
Right.
mean, I think about like the way I like speaking to my kids before we go to somebody else's home. Like, this is how we wouldn't do the same things we would do in our home at somebody else's home, right? And
Yes.
teaching at a store, we wouldn't disrupt the samples, or we wouldn't open
Right.
products. But maybe this group of children have parents that are underwater and they didn't have the
Yes.
life experience to do those things a few years ago, and now they're with the influence of social media and influencers and YouTube, they're just kind of running wild. And the root of it is that they are still very much children. So even though they're in
Mhm.
a makeup store, they see a bright colored thing and they want to touch it. I mean, I take my 4-year-old to Sephora all the time and she's wanting to touch everything. And we work on it. And when she is 8 and 9, she will know not to touch things in that store. But
Yeah.
maybe
She will
some
have
of,
heard it 100 times, right? Like,
yes.
not to do it. Like, it'll eventually sink in at some point, but it. Sometimes it takes a few years and a developmental leap before kids get
Mhm.
something like that, before it
Yes.
finally sinks in. So yeah, I don't know that we can expect 8 to 10-year-olds to even know, number one, how to take care of
Mhm.
themselves, much less be respectful in an environment where they're in a crowd and it's in public. you know?
Right,
So,
right.
yeah,
And there are lots of fun looking things to touch.
there are. Yeah, I mean, I wanna touch them too, but we can do it in a
I
polite way
know.
where, we're being respectful of the product in
I
the
know.
store. But yeah,
Well,
permissive
and
parenting's always existed, right? Like
mhm.
it's one of the 4 different parent styles that we assess for. So we're looking at
Oh, what are
yeah,
the
so
other ones? Maybe this is a different episode. I just wanna know.
well, there's definitely like permissive parenting. There's also the one we should all sort of
Authoritarian.
aim to be is authoritative. So it's having a lot of warmth with a lot of boundary. Like that would be the ideal
Mhm.
parenting strategy. So there's authoritative and there's authoritarian, which is like all all
Bad.
rules and no love. So
Mhm.
there's these different parent styles, but permissive is like all love with no boundaries. And it's like, I
Mhm.
mean, we all want our kids to love us, but we also do need to be that guiding light for them that shows them where boundaries lie and how to be respectful of them. And
Mhm.
it's our job to teach them how to, be a person in society. So, um,
Right.
but not every
Right.
parent also sees that as their job.
Yeah, or maybe the
So
parent hasn't mastered with that themselves, because 'cause I've seen that
that
too.
that could be the case. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
wow.
I
Interesting.
know.
Okay. So
Yeah.
let's talk about issue 2, which I know at some point here we're gonna do an entire episode on this issue because
Yeah.
it's been requested and I'm really interested in it too. But social media and screen time use for young children combined with peer influence seems to be driving a lot of this. So, one of the quotes that I read while researching this topic said, of all the things to worry about with children doing early, wearing makeup is hardly one of them. And I would say that I totally agree with that. I think that a lot of media outlets right now are focused on like wearing makeup as being such a negative, and I don't think that that's the negative, because if the child is looking at as playtime and an outlet for their creativity, that's great and fun and exciting and is something you can bond with your child on, right?
Yeah.
But I think that maybe to your point earlier, if it is the comparison and trying to use that to alter your look based on the way social media has hooked you in and it's become such a big influence at a young age, that's where their concern would be and the issue.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the comparison is the biggest problem with social media. And if you think about like the amount of people that we had to compare ourselves to when we were adolescents and preteens, the circle was much smaller because we
Mhm,
didn't have Facebook or Instagram and have hundreds of friends and all these influencers coming at us to compare ourselves to. We had just the people around us in our class and whoever else we could get access to in person. That was basically it.
mhm,
Nowadays, I mean, look at the amount of influence that these kids have to deal with. I mean, people are trying to influence them through social media all the time, and that comparison aspect is huge, especially when you're going through puberty, and those hormones make it seem like everything that you do is the most important thing, and everybody's looking at you right now. Like it's this, it's a fallacy. We have a name for it, but it's a fallacy of that you are the center of attention at all times and everyone is looking at you. And it's like you're going through this, you feel like that. And then you compare yourself to these other people and think, well, everyone else has to think that I'm not as good
mhm,
as that. Right. Like you just know in your own head because you just have this sense about yourself due to the hormones that you're experiencing at that time. So
mhm,
it's hard. It's just such a hard thing to ask kids to go through. And then
mhm.
if you think about the stress that that causes, the stress that this is all causing, you know, I think we'll talk about this in a moment, but you have in the notes that this is reminiscent of like diet culture, like the toxic
Yes.
diet culture.
That's what that wasn't an original thought from me. I read that in one of the articles, but it really hit home. Like when
Yeah.
we were 8, 9, 10, 11, we were being exposed in magazines to diet culture, and it was so toxic and shocking that it was
Mhm.
allowed. And
Yeah.
the conversations that we would hear from grown women about their eating behaviors is also shocking. And I do think that our generation, millennial moms, I think that we have stopped that. I am seeing a lot of body acceptance, a lot of awareness about how food is discussed with children. There are not diet pills being marketed to children that I'm aware of. So it does
Yeah.
seem that that wound that hit us as millennial children and now as moms, we've healed that.
Yeah.
But this whole skincare treatment culture that we're seeing in young girls, that is very reminiscent of that to me, right? So you're seeing the child is seeing a filter, most likely, of an influencer
Hmm.
who potentially is a child as well, who doesn't have any skin flaws. And
Right.
they're pitching and selling and showing an 8 or 9 step skincare routine. And that is just not necessary. First of all, like an 8 and 9 step skincare routine is not necessary at most ages.
Mine is not that many. Yeah, no.
No,
Uh-uh.
but
That's crazy.
it is interesting to make that connection of the parallel because um what can we do to prevent that affecting our children the way that
Yeah.
the toxic diet culture affected us?
Yeah, I love that analogy because when you think about the amount of stress that kids are experiencing these days because of social media, and to an extent because of permissive parenting, right? Like they're having to
Mhm.
find things out on their own and figure themselves out. You know, eating disorders and diet culture is all about control. And control gives you a sense of peace. Like if you have a sense of control over one aspect of your life, and for us it was dieting or it was weight or it was, eating disorder related. For these kids, it seems like it may be shifting for them to that perfectionism being based on skincare. And
Mhm.
so this skincare regimen, and I don't think this is all bad, is actually providing them a sense of comfort because it
Mhm.
gives them a sense of control over their uncontrollable environment. Their
Oh,
environments these days are
interesting.
uncontrollable. And
Yes.
this is one aspect of their lives where they can take control of themselves. They can do some self care and they're seeing their friends do it. And
Mhm.
it to the degree that that's a good modeled behavior for them, I like it. I think it's good.
Right.
It's not harming them to the extent that like calorie restriction would have harmed us. It's
Right.
giving them something that's theirs. And so I
Mm.
like that. But what I don't like is if they compare themselves to other people and then feel bad about it. And I don't like um if it's going to be with products that are not appropriate for their skin,
Right. That
you
could
know?
potentially harm their skin because there are some skincare products that a child could use and it could damage their skin long term. It could start premature um, aging of the skin. So the skin could start to respond to some of the ingredients the way that an adult's skin would. And then it kind of alters that childhood skin texture. But
Mm,
yeah,
yeah.
I agree with you in that. It's a tricky topic because there is so much good. And of course, like saying this is concerning that children are obsessed with skincare. Well, obviously there's so many worse things that
I
a child
know.
could be obsessed with that really is concerning. And if these little girls and maybe boys in some cases are having fun going into a Sephora and they've been taught to handle themselves respectfully within the store environment and they're
Right.
excited to buy products and their parent deters them from the ones with unhealthy ingredients and they buy a couple fun things and they put their headbands on and do it with their friends at home. That's all really good.
Yeah, I agree. And I see a need for education in that
Mhm.
domain
Yes.
for parents and for kids to tell them, look, your kid shouldn't be using retinol and here's why. Or like what you
Yeah.
just said, teaching about the ways that it could hurt their skin earlier and maybe
Mhm.
even change the trajectory of their development because you're using certain products too early.
Right.
So I see a need
Yeah.
of that education. We need more of that. Maybe even on YouTube. If they're out there searching for it,
Yeah.
then that's really where we need to be meeting them is on YouTube or wherever they're
Right.
looking and telling
Wherever
them,
they
look,
are.
here's what you should be doing. Because
Yeah.
clearly they want to take care of themselves, and I think that's a good
Mhm.
thing. So,
Yes, yes,
yeah.
I agree. Well, the last kind of issue that has been out there with regards to this is how the beauty industry is responding or not responding, and
Yeah.
their perception of Sephora Kids and the marketing that
Yeah.
has shifted because of this issue. So, um, I think that it's important to recognize big beauty companies that maybe have different interests. Like I mentioned, Drunk Elephant is owned by Shiseido.
Mm.
Um, and once a beauty brand gets to that stage, it's going to be looked at differently. It's not going to have that kind of transparency that is always best for the consumer, like maybe a smaller brand that has really just started to serve their community in a very specific way. So I think that there's very different responses within the beauty industry to this topic. And it's
Mhm.
important right now for parents to recognize what brands are saying, because there's brands that are feeding into this and their marketing is reflective of that. Their models are looking younger. They are trending on TikTok because they're pushing these products to this demographic. And then there's brands that are speaking out and saying, hey, our products are actually not okay for children. So, I have a quote from our favorite retinol product from Sepia, a friend of the podcast, founder Mike Medulla. I asked him his thoughts on this, and he gave us a pretty impactful quote. So he said, taking care of your skin is important at any age. Kids and teens should stick to the basics of cleansing, moisturizing, and SPF. Using potent activists like retinol and AHAS at a young age could be very risky for skin health and is completely unnecessary at that age. S-
Is AHAS, is that like acids? Like
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
that domain? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah.
So, I think it's important to kind of watch out for what brands are saying, because for a lot of brands, and this is just the world we live in, this is consumerism,
Mhm.
sales rule. So nobody's looking at who's buying per se. They're looking at, great, this is all selling. Let's push it. However it's selling, let's push it that way. It's selling within this age demographic. Also, with Ulta and Sephora, they both have rewards programs, and a lot of children are on their mom's reward number. So they give their mom's phone number, and they get the points or the rewards. So some brands maybe are not even seeing, right, that this is being purchased by this age. So they're still seeing it within the 30 to 4-year-old millennial mother's age.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I do think we've talked about this on other episodes. There is a lack of transparency within a lot of beauty brands. And the most important part of knowing this is just really that it's up to us, the consumers, to flip the package over and read the ingredients. You want to stay away from the brand's marketing and from their social media for all your information. You actually have to get in and do the work yourself. There is dishonest marketing out there. There is a makeup brand targeted to children right now that they have the word clean all over their gondola, and the ingredients are not clean. So it's interesting how things are able to slip through like that. Um, and then I think with the beauty industry, it's also important to note that when you're seeing them pop up on social media, that they are going to target wherever they're getting those sales. So if your child is on social media and they're looking at that brand's TikTok or Instagram, it's not targeting your child because it's a great product for them. It's targeting your
Right.
child because they're seeing an opportunity for revenue from them. So it's really, I mean, let's just add it onto the plate of the parents. It's really
I
up
know.
to
I know. Now we got to go
one
research
more
every
thing.
ingredient and go see what we're supposed to be using. That's why you come to us. We'll tell you what brands are good. um,
Exactly.
yeah.
And there's not that many out there right now, unfortunately, but so you really have to be really particular about how you're shopping.
Yeah. And just to hit home, I mean, it was shocking for me learning from you for the first time about the beauty industry and about the lack of transparency.
Mhm.
I was just having a conversation with my parents about this recently about how when something says it's clean, that doesn't mean that it's clean. And they're like, wait, what? And I
I
had the
know.
same reaction. Wait, what? It's not clean, but they just said it's clean. And the bottom line is that this is a company and the company may not have integrity. Bottom line,
Yes.
lots of companies
Yeah.
don't. This is just something that they can say.
Mhm.
Nobody's holding them to account for it besides sales. So
Mhm.
if you determine that something is not clean, they're saying it's clean, then don't buy it and don't let your
Yeah.
money go support that sort of, ethic.
Yes.
But
Exactly.
light bulb went off for me. And I hope it's going off for other people too, to start to recognize that just because it's marketed a certain way or says it's clean doesn't mean that it is.
Mhm.
We got to really, really be careful.
Right. Or even if it says that it is for children. I always laugh when I see a brand and it's like, this brand is for everyone. It's for all genders and all ages. And it's like, of course you're saying that because you want to sell it to
Right.
everyone.
Of course. That makes a
Of
lot of
course.
sense.
It could be
Yeah.
for dogs too, right? It's just so obnoxious.
Yeah. Use it on your guinea pigs. Oh my
Right.
goodness. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Well, I had a question for you with regards to if you're seeing, like, how should a parent handle this if you're seeing your own child participating in this behavior? Like, maybe the parent has determined that certain social media is okay for their child, but they are seeing this type of impact and this strong desire for an 8 to 10 care skincare routine. How should the parent handle that?
I would start by evaluating where did they get that information from or that idea. For my daughter, it was YouTube. And so there are ways to put child locks onto
Mhm.
everything. And so we went in there and made sure exactly what content she's allowed to see and for how long she's allowed to see it. Coco
Mm.
Melon, yes, fine. Starfall or an educational program,
Mhm,
fine. Ones that are not recognized by me or my husband, we're saying no to. And so
mhm,
we're putting that lock on ahead of time so that if she goes to that content again, we're going to know it. So I would say
mm,
put guardrails up for technology until your kid is definitely ready or until you are ready to teach them how to be ready. Because until you're ready to be there with them 24/7, holding their hand and showing them what's important versus what's not important, you're really throwing your kid out there and letting, whatever happens happens, and that's just it's not responsible with a child and with their brain and what's being conveyed to them. Like, you really have to make sure that you're guarding that because it's precious.
mhm,
The things that they should be comparing themselves are not on, social media. And like, I know I have agreements with parents of kids that are in the classes with my children that we're not going to be doing social media till eighth grade.
mhm,
And that's because we really feel like their cognitive development is not going to be ready to consume things like Facebook, Instagram, and all of that until that point in time. And that's really the point in time where I'm going to be ready to jump in with her and help her sort through what kind of content she's being exposed to, what people are saying to her, and how much it should matter to her. Because what we
mhm,
do see for kids who have a lot of social media influence, especially teenagers, is we see it impact their mental health. And rates of depression and suicide in girls in particular for adolescents are very high. That's when you start to see it really kick up in a normative way. And then add on top of that all the stress and all the comparison of social media. So we really need to be careful about things like making sure they're safe and making sure they're engaging with safe content. So I think that's the first place I'd look to is limiting and guarding their exposure to technology. And then I like what you said earlier about how it can really be a good relationship builder to do some of these things with your kids together. My daughter is a very punk rock, tomboy sort of girl. When she was really excited about learning about skincare, it did sort of tickle me pink. I got excited that she was excited about it. It was something we have in common
Yeah.
we could talk about. So to the degree we can use that to bolster our relationship and talk about what things she should be doing now and what things she should wait to do until she's a little bit older, and explain and give rationale provision for that
Mhm.
decision point for her, then I think that that is really, really helpful for them to learn why too. You just can't just say don't use it, say why, because it's not good for
Right.
your skin yet, but this is good for your skin. And I can tell you're really interested in that. I'm going to sort of support that with education, and I'll learn along with her, at the same time. So
I love
I love
that.
that.
I love how you said, until you as the parent are ready, because at the end of the day, they're children. So they're
Yes.
only doing as much as they're allowed to do.
Yep.
So if you as the parent are not mentally, or you don't have the bandwidth
Exactly.
to educate and hold your child's hand through this, the answer is no for your child, because
Hmm.
this is really a topic that needs guidance.
Absolutely. Yep. Totally.
Yeah.
100%. Yep.
I love
Yeah.
it. This like my favorite book ever, Hold On to Your Kids by Dr. Gabor Mate, which I talk about all the time and I've read it like 4 times. But he talks about that a lot in his book as well, of just like the literally holding your child's hand through so many pieces of life is the most valuable tool that they're going to have, to see your the way you react to things and the way you handle things, and to learn from that, to not
Yeah.
be figuring it all out on their own.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's so much there to handle, but like
Yeah.
making sure you're guiding them through it and with purpose, make sure
Yes.
you're and giving perspective. I think about salient experiences I had that were negative when I was younger, and I really needed somebody that's saying this at this point does not matter. I'm going to let you know right now, when
Right.
you get to college, this what just happened to you today is not going to matter one bit. And whoever was just picking on you or whatnot, they're not going to
Yeah.
be nearly as successful as you're going to be. You're going to be doing all this amazing stuff, and that person's going to be left in the dust. Just trust me. And I needed that perspective at the time. And I just, making sure we provide that perspective for our kids too, for any online bullying or any
Hmm.
bad comments that they get. Because
Hmm.
some kids can take that to heart and think my life is over. Like, that's
Hmm.
the end of my life. And it's like, that's
Yeah.
just not where this needs to go. Like, you really do need somebody guiding you saying, nope, that was like the dumbest comment I've ever read. And like, let's just totally forget
Right.
about it and think about what actually matters, which is in your
Right.
surrounding physically right now. Let's
Right.
go there instead of being electronically connected to everybody.
Yes.
It's too
I
much.
love that. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what products are appropriate for children. So, as
Yes.
I mentioned before, there's not a lot out there, but we both love Pacifica makeup for our girls. It's a good
Yes.
price point. It is clean ingredients. It's not made for children, which actually makes me like it more, because they're not targeting children. But if you have a child who is interested in using their creativity, using makeup as a creative outlet, this is a great brand because they have a lot of fun, beautiful colors. They have really cool packaging, which kids are interested in. And then the ingredients are clean. And the fact that they're a lower price point is nice too for a children's toy per se at the age that they are. And you
Hmm.
can find them at Target and at Ulta. Um, and then as far as skincare, like I said before, really the only thing your child needs is a gentle cleanser, oil-free moisturizer, and a mineral SPF. And then some type of salicylic acid if they do have early onset acne. And that's always something that a dermatologist can help you pick which one for that.
Hmm.
But very, very gentle. Um, we had recommended Ever Eden before, but it just broke your child out there,
Yeah.
which is concerning.
I
Uh,
know. Well, and then
there,
I looked at actually a friend of mine, the same neighbor. She's like, "Oh, and I just looked at the face wash and it's a 4 out of 10 on the EWG." So I was like, "Oh no, I really thought this was like an
I
all
know.
clean, I could like a company that you could just go to for anything." And it was like, not quite clean. It was good enough
I
maybe, but
know.
it
A
stung.
4 is low, though. A 4 is low.
I
Well, and
know.
that's I mean, that's such a good point. I didn't realize it was a 4, but that brand is really marketed as a totally clean children's brand. And then
Yeah,
they're a 4 on
I know.
EWG. I wouldn't choose a product that's a 4, like, knowingly for
I
my
wouldn't
children,
either. And if you look at their
right?
moisturizer, I don't think it's that high. Like their other products aren't that high, but that the face wash is. And it was the moisturizer actually that was burning my daughter's face off. So now
Ugh.
I'm back to square one. I'll have to
I know.
try some new products with her and see what works.
You'll have to try. There's not much out there. What I'm doing for my daughters right now is I got some products from Whole Foods. It's the Babu brand.
Okay.
Do you know that brand?
I've seen
And
it. Yeah.
they come in these giant components that are too big for little hands, but I did just buy some cute, like small, empty bottles from Target and I put some of
Oh,
those products in it for them. So that felt like a good place for where we are. My
yeah.
girls are really little. So um that was good because I felt really confident in the safety of the ingredients
I'll
in
have to
that
take a look at
brand.
that. Thank you.
But
Yeah.
the bottle's like as big as their heads. I was like, this is and it's not in like the most child exciting packaging, right? It's,
Yeah.
brown and white, but we made it a little cuter. So
Oh, let them decorate the
yeah.
outside of their little containers. That's
Yeah. Oh,
cute.
that's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that kind of covers what products are appropriate. And I know that Drunk Elephant has been named so much in the um, media outlets with regards to this story. And even though it is in clean at Sephora, it is important that if your 8, 9, 10, 11 year old is asking for the 8 to 9 piece skincare routine from them, that you as the parent are looking at the ingredients, because a lot of their ingredients are not appropriate for child skin. And I think that the brand the brand was made for adults, so that's an important point to note on your child wanting those products.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point.
You know what we did just do with a group of little girls, some of my girlfriends and I, they have some older daughters and they got some face masks from Sephora that are animals. So kind of like a face mask
Oh, cute.
we would use as an adult, but they were made for children. They are all clean and natural and they are animals. So when you put it on, um, it looks
Oh,
like it looks like an animal, like a leopard or a tiger. And my girls are so young, they're not privy to all of this yet. But the older girls, I thought, wow, this is a really age appropriate, but feels like you're doing a self care thing and it's kind of fun. And then it turns joyful and silly because you all have like an animal face mask on.
that's so
So that's kind of a
cute.
fun thing to do
Yeah, maybe
with
we can link
kids.
that on our Instagram or something, and
Yes.
I'll go buy some for my eldest because I know she'd love that.
Yes.
Oh,
Let's do
cute.
that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, good. Well, this has been such an enlightening conversation and so pertinent to my own experience right now as a mom of a 9-year-old. So I really appreciate being able to talk through this with someone with your expertise. So hopefully it's helpful to our listeners, but I'm just going to highlight a few things I think I picked up as takeaways for today. So, number one, I think talking about permissive parenting, I just think that permissive parenting is going to yield unruly children. And you
Mhm.
can expect that because so much research supports that, that's what happens. If you're permissive, your kids are going to be unruly. Unruly kids are not fun to be around in society. So take a little bit more effort to make sure you're really guiding your children and showing them the ropes and teaching them how to be, respectful in places like Sephora and Ulta and other stores they're frequenting, and making sure you have a idea of where they're at and what's happening. And then as a parent, just being aware and present in all areas of your child's life. So delay things like social media if you can, to the extent that you can, for as long as possible, or until you as the parent are really ready to go through all of that with them and monitor everything that's occurring, so that something dangerous doesn't happen to your child while they're online. And then number three, teaching self-care is really important. And I think it's positive. That's a positive
Mhm.
thing, to want to take care of yourself and to help guide your child, in healthy, safe ways to do that for their skin. Appropriate skincare routines and makeup can be fun. And you can use it as an educational experience for them to go through that with them and really help them navigate all the products, because it's hard even as adults, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it all
Yeah.
is. I
Yeah.
know. I love those. Well, this has been so much fun. Thank you for your perspective on this. This reminds me of when we first started the podcast, our walks that we would take where
I know.
our our two interests were combined
Coming
in this
together.
topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love
So much
doing this.
fun. Me too.
I know. Well, thank you everyone for listening. That's all for this episode of Platinum Perspective. Tune in every week for more beauty and psychology. Please tell your friends to rate, like, and subscribe. Bye.
Bye.